Now the election back and I'll die away. In short, this is what I have to say. Let us forget spites and grudges and concentrate. Come, let us sit and try to relate. Because now, more than ever, we must show discipline, tolerance, and production to build a strong and better nation. I say that is the main foundation. So come, let us work hand in hand, because this is our land. Come, my brother, come, my sister, and let us build a nation together. Whoa.
Come, my brother, come, my sister, and let us work hand in hand to build a nation together. I want to welcome you to this very important segment in the program where I will speak, laying the foundation for deeper reasoning and for a higher level of consciousness on the way we view things here in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. I want to, again, challenge the NNP, challenge Keith Mitchell to say to him, if you were serious about your supporters coming out of poverty, coming out of their vulnerable position or state, you will support the JUMP program initiated by the NDC administration. You will support the WASH program initiated by the NDC administration. You will support the free tuition policy initiated by the NDC administration. You will support pension and gratuity going to those who retire. And you will also support the regularization of workers who are temporary or on contract within the public service. If you want to see your people come out of poverty, you will support the housing authority to say to your supporters, to say to the people who occupy those apartments, if you pay, you will get ownership. You will own something in life, and you will no longer be called poor and vulnerable because you will own something worth $55,000, $60,000, $40,000. You will own that. I am saying the NNP, Keith Mitchell, and all of them, they are not serious about you coming out of poverty. For 23 years and a half, they call you poor and vulnerable, and you accepted that tag. You accepted that name. And I say to you, it is time to break that curse that they put upon you, where you have field slaves and house slaves, where you have a person who believes he's a master over you. So he tags you as his property, poor and vulnerable. For 23 years and a half, they call you poor and vulnerable, and you believed. It became ingrained in you. It is simple. As I said in the past, there are people who could walk. Maybe they had a day or two of sickness or a moment where they thought they couldn't walk. They went into the hospital and the mental programming caused them to believe that they just cannot walk. So they remain at home and people come to them and tell them that they cannot walk, and they believe. Then some pastor, some prophet, quote unquote, comes into the community and visit that person because people are saying that person cannot walk. But indeed, the person could walk. But mentally, the person believes they cannot walk. So that prophet or that pastor says to that person, get up and walk. Put down your stick and get up and walk. I beseech you, put down your stick, get up and walk. And then the person starts walking. But it's not because of some miracle. It is not because of some supernatural power the person had, the prophet or the pastor. It was a mental barrier that was preventing that person from walking. Because everybody said that that person couldn't walk after they went to the hospital. They start moving around with stick and forcing and, But that individual came and said, put down your stick, I beseech thee, I beseech you, walk. And then they start walking. It is the same thing with the poor and vulnerable. They call these people poor and vulnerable. And all of a sudden, they become poor and they become vulnerable. So for 23 years and a half, the NNP keep calling their supporters poor and vulnerable. And they accept it and they start living in that moment where when you look at them, their nails not kept properly, their fingernails, their toenails, their teeth, their hygiene, their smell, their hair, their clothing, they start acting that way. It's a sickness. But it's a sickness put upon you. Then you go to their home, wherever they live, and it's not kept properly. It's dirty on the outside. The yard is, it starts manifesting itself even inside the home. So not just seeing them outside, but in their home. Because they call them poor and vulnerable, they start believing that they are poor and vulnerable, and they start acting in that way. That is exactly what took place for 20-something years. And they don't want to work because they would sit home, make plenty children, and wait for the government to give them the poor relief assistance. Because the NNP trained them that way. A lot of these people are able-bodied people. They could work. They could earn their daily bread. But they remain there to collect the poor relief assistance. That is why the NNP is so vicious when it comes to this 150 that the NNP did not budget for, only put there temporarily for COVID. Just after COVID, they added that 150. It was temporary, and they know that. They did not budget for it, but they want the NDC to come and budget for it and allocate that to cause these people to believe that they could sit on their laurels and wait for government to mind them. And when they make a whole pile of children, under the NNP time, they were getting 150 per child as support. So a parent, NNP, well, they call them poor and vulnerable. They would make 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 children living in one little place. And then they go and collect $150 each for them. That's $1,500 or so dollars. Right? They go in and collect that for them. Don't fool yourself, They know what they were doing. And then they would collect the $450. So they're getting almost $2,000. They were collecting almost $2,000, staying at home and making children because the NNP call them poor and vulnerable, and they support the NNP. But not only that, they were getting free textbooks. They were getting back-to-school vouchers. They were getting the road walk They were getting material assistance. They were getting every single thing were actually going to them. Yes, because the NNP saw only them as important, the poor and the vulnerable, because that's their support base, that's their supporters, and they make them poor and they keep them poor. Because once they poor and dependent and beggy, they always have to go to these politicians and beg them, and they become loyal. Yes, they become loyal. And as a result, they believe, well, once that party is not there, they cannot survive. They cannot live. But how are you surviving today? Huh? I am saying we have to call on the NNP. If you love these people, the poor and the vulnerable, you need to support the programs of the government that would take these people out of poverty. We don't want these people to remain in poverty, to remain poor and vulnerable. For 23 years and a half, these supporters were called poor and vulnerable, and they accept it. But look at the people who are calling them poor and vulnerable from within that organization. They are wealthy. They are wealthy. They have millions and millions of dollars. But these people have nothing. They have to depend on government for every single thing. That is why during the NNP time, they had so many social safety net programs where you had more than $300 million going into those programs. So on an annual basis, on a yearly basis, the poor and the vulnerable, they are NNP supporters, predominantly so. They were collecting $300 million, just like that, taxpayers' money, just like that, about $300 million. And that kept them loyal to the new nasty party. We have to say it as is, you know, and we can go through some of these social safety net programs. Do the math. How much million is pumped into the poor relief assistance program per year? How much million is pumped into the new Imani training program per year? How much million is pumped into the geriatric caregivers program per year? How much million is pumped into the bushing program per year? How much million is pumped into the housing assistance program per year? How much million is pumped into the other social safety net programs like the voucher program, the free textbook program? And we can go on and on and on. The transportation assistance program, right? How much million is pumped into that? Do the math. You don't need to be a genius to understand why the new nasty party remain in power for so long. They call these people poor and vulnerable. That's their supporters. And nearly all the social safety net programs, they created more and more social safety net programs just that these people will get the money and get assistance and they remain poor. Because if you're getting it free, then no need to work. If you're getting it easily, no need to work. That is the attitude that they actually breed, because it was a breeding thing, you know. They were actually causing these people to be poor. They were populating Grenada with poor people, poor and vulnerable people. Thank God Grenadians opened up their eyes and liberated themselves and gotten rid of this dirty regime. But let us look at the facts on the table. How many social safety net programs were actually there and the kind of money that was spent for those programs? We could look at it. Let us look at it. It's not no rocket science. But folks, if NNP is serious about getting these people out of poverty, they will support the WASH program. they will support the WASH program to bring bathroom and toilets, indoor bathroom and toilets to the people.
This is WASH, the Water, Access and Sanitation in Homes program, an initiative that's changing lives, eliminating disparities, and building brighter futures. This groundbreaking program is the flagship initiative of Nation Builders and is aimed at providing clean water and proper sanitation facilities to those who need it. It's simple. We believe that clean water and sanitation are fundamental human rights. Therefore, we are committed to providing all households in Grenada with these necessities by 2027. The goals of WASH are clear and straightforward. 1. We will ensure that every home has access to indoor running water. 2. We will provide equitable sanitation systems like bathrooms to homes that don't currently have them. 3. We will end the use of open defecation facilities such as pit latrines. And finally, through these goals, we will enhance social comfort and improve environmental aesthetics. The WASH program found its start in Belle Isle, St. David, a close-knit community with unique challenges and potential. Belle Isle is a picturesque place, but the socio-economic disparities are visible. Many homes in Belle Isle lack access to basic amenities. In fact, our team identified 51 homes in the community that could benefit from our assistance. However, installing the necessary facilities can cost around 20,000 EC dollars per home. But with support from members of the private sector, we can make a significant impact, not just in Belle Isle, but throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. Join us in our mission to improve living conditions, promote well-being, and empower communities. WASH, clean water, happy homes, stronger communities.
Yes. So the NDC started this program, and I am saying if the NNP is serious about taking their people out of poverty, because the majority of their supporters, they call them poor and vulnerable. If they are serious about taking these people out of poverty, taking them out of being vulnerable, they must support this program, the WASH program. And they must also support the JUMP program, right? The JUMP program is also a very important program that they must support.
The JUMP program is a public-private partnership between the Government of Grenada and Flow Grenada. It focuses on 3 core components: digital literacy training, providing connectivity with free devices, and offering subsidized broadband access. These components collectively aim to address the digital divide by empowering individuals with skills, ensuring access to technology, and making high-speed internet affordable. In an interview with GBN, Flow's Marketing and Communication Executive Troy Courtney went into details about the subsidized broadband service provided through the JUMP program.
Now, in the JUMP program, like I said, we'll be providing subsidized broadband, a free device, which would be either a laptop or a tablet, and we'll also be providing free digital literacy training. The subsidized broadband is going to be at only $20 a month. So that takes a massive chunk of the cost of the customer, and that will be covered by the government and Flow.
The eligibility criteria for the JUMP program was also explained.
Currently, we're working with the government and we're taking applications to the SEED program. So anybody that you know that is on the SEED program, you can come in and you can nominate them to be a part of the JUMP program. And everybody that applies for the program must go through a vetting process, which will be vetted by the Government of Grenada in order for them to be able to know if you're eligible for the JUMP program.
The long-term vision of the JUMP program in Grenada, according to Courtney, is to create a digitally inclusive society where everyone has the skills and tools to thrive in the digital age.
During the pandemic, we would have noticed that a lot of students were unable to, fully participate in school activities. And that's because they were unable to connect via the internet. Now, we want to curb that. We want to ensure that they have the tools needed to be competitive in the workforce, and we are providing them now with the means to be able to do so.
By providing digital literacy training, free devices, and affordable broadband access, the program will contribute to the country's digital advancement and inclusivity, thereby ensuring that Grenadians can actively participate in the digital economy, access educational resources, and connect with the world, ultimately driving economic and social progress. Individuals are encouraged to make referrals for family members or friends who genuinely need digital connectivity and education. This referral system not only helps identify and assist those in need, but also foster a sense of collective responsibility in ensuring equitable access to the program's benefits.
Yes, so I am saying, folks, if the NNP, if Keith Mitchell and all of them, if they are interested in taking their supporters out from poverty and vulnerability to a better place, they need to support this program. But they will not. They will not support the WASH program. They will not support the JUMP program. No, because they don't want their supporters to come out of poverty. Your mother what? Because if they come out of poverty, then what would happen? They would not support the NNP. They will be liberated. If the NNP wants their supporters to be, independent, to come out of poverty and to remove themselves from that vulnerable state that they're in, the NNP will support the free tuition policy by the government to provide all students in TAMCC and all students in ULO with free tuition, $810 per year.
Prospective students turned out in their numbers at the T.A. Marisho Community College for the first day of registration on Monday. Registrar at the college, Marva Bowen Neptune, during an interview with our news team, reported an influx of applications, which she attributes to the removal of tuition fees at the institution.
What we see now is influx of applications because, of course, with the free tuition, students are now realizing it is very affordable, so they are applying now. And we also seen that now that they have the results, they're able to get into the programs. Sometimes they don't want to apply unless they know they met the requirements. Some students don't want to apply into the other programs because they really want to do the associate degree.
The registrar also used the opportunity to speak about the registration process, which will run throughout the week.
All students who sit the CSEC exams and students who sit it maybe previous years and they want to attend TAMCC, they can come in this week. We're here from Monday to Friday from 9 to 3 p.m. We can do next week, but we wouldn't have that formal setup. The students can apply into TAMCC for late registration up to 2 weeks into the semester.
Bowen Neptune says there are some prerequisites needed to successfully apply.
You must have 5 subjects, including English, to be accepted into the associate degree programs. However, we want students to understand, or prospective students to understand, that if they do not have the 5 subjects, including English, they can get into other programs as well. So we have 1-year certificate program that they can apply to, and then while they're in this program, they can work on the deficient subject or subjects, and by next year, they can get into the associate degree program.
Yes, so I am saying if the NNP wants to take their supporters out of poverty and to change that name that they call them poor and vulnerable to a better life, they need to support this initiative by government. Our beloved Prime Minister spoke passionately about education and how he sees education in moving forward. The NNP, if they are serious, they will support the educational trust of this new administration because it will help their supporters to be educated, to move from being illiterate to being literate. That's so important. Let's listen in to our beloved Prime Minister.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I feel quite passionate about education, so I think it's important for me to, in the absence of the Minister of Education, obviously, in this House, to speak a little bit on the question of education. And I will start off by saying I actually agree with everything that has been said by the MP for St. Andrew Southeast. And that education is something we should feel passionate about. But I also think we should not, because it has been that way, continue to believe we can improve our education system by being reluctant to make some of the changes we need to make. And I appreciate that sometimes when you do make changes, the disruptions will always cause some level of discomfort. And that it is important for us as the policy holders to treat with the concerns or the discomfort in an open and frank and honest manner. So that the public, parents and students in particular, the teaching profession, the business community, understand what it is we are trying to achieve. And I say we here, meaning including members of the opposition. And I'm particularly mindful that the MP for St. Andrew Southeast has been the Minister of Education for some considerable time. And so perhaps she is more uniquely placed than anyone else to speak on the issue of whatever policy initiatives that might have been started under, or while she was Minister of Education, or while the opposition members had formed the government. So I think the sober question we have to ask first and foremost is whether our education system is really serving the needs of the population of Grenada. I think that's the first and foremost question we have to ask. And I think there are easy tools by which we can measure that. If the education system was serving our needs, why do we have the Imani program? And the millions of dollars we pump into the Imani program, if we, from a policy perspective, had pumped those funds into the education system, would we have the need? Because let's face it, the Imani program is essentially a remedial program. We talk about life skills. I don't think at 12, 13, or 14 you get into the Imani program. I'm subject to correction. What age do you get into the Imani program? At 18. Okay. So if you wait till 18 to teach your children life skills, what's the point of the last 18 years? In fact, I would have taught the life skills, in some instances, are more important during the first 18 years than thereafter. So when we talk, and I say this because I sometimes get the impression that whenever we talk about something, somehow it's been viewed as we saying something is new. Of course it's not new. CVQ is not new. TVET is not new. The NTA, we met all of these things there. And we are accepting that they need to be strengthened, expanded, encouraged, frankly, given more prominence than the relentless pursuit of academic certification. And I'm saying that has to be a fundamental shift that starts at primary school, not secondary school. So when we talk about access to education, and access to even secondary, I'm using secondary here simply as far as I view, Mr. Speaker, as when you start becoming a teenager. It is not just academic access. It may very well mean going in a TVET type arrangement almost exclusively. And we have to be able to say as a nation, that's fine. We support that, we encourage that, and give our students who want to pursue that type of education the same prominence, the same accolades as someone who wants to pursue the traditional academic type routes. And so when we talk about equity, yes, because we also want them to know that the result of that equity would be the ability to get employment and to be deployed in the economy without feeling that you're a second-class citizen. So I'm saying, where's the accolades of the furniture maker, the mason, the plumber, the electrician? Where historically, and this has nothing to do with the opposition, I'm saying this is us as a society, where historically have we created, in a post-independent period, an education system that held up these people? We have not. And so the question of access and equity and the broader context of what kind of education system we have means oftentimes, respectfully, the people who are in control of the education system themselves resist the change. And this is just the nature of life. If you are in control of something and somebody else tells you you need to change, oftentimes you will resist the change because you just want to keep doing what you've done. And this is a national challenge that we face. Our principals, our teachers, our parents, our students, we as a society have to ask ourselves, if we keep churning out hundreds of students who then need remedial literacy classes, remedial math classes, and we can talk about that. I don't think the former Minister of Education and current MP could have been satisfied with our pass rates in math and literacy. And I'm using very basic terms. I'm not even calling it mathematics and whatever. Math and literacy. And we've had some policy initiatives that have failed us. So where are the literacy specialists? Are they in secondary schools or primary schools? They're in secondary schools. They're not at the primary schools. So of course what is going to happen is that by the time you get to the secondary school, you have children who can't read and write. So they're functionally illiterate. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this is something that we have to talk about openly as a nation. This is not about casting blame on the opposition. This is not casting blame on us. I'm saying as a country, as a nation, we have valued, cherished, encouraged one type of education system. One based purely on this excessive obsession with CXC, certification, and these grades. And we've obsessed over it, and what has it produced? I'll tell you what it has produced, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Labour will tell you that we are signing certificates for work permits en masse for construction workers. So you can go down to Lassegas and count the number of Grenadians who work there versus the number of non-Grenadians who are doing construction-type jobs. That's the reality. We can go to Spice Basket in St. George's Northeast, which has been renovated by one of the call centers which have expanded from St. Andrew. They are importing carpenters. When I acted as the Minister for Labour, because the Honourable Minister was outside, and I saw the work permits, I actually blinked a couple of times to make sure that I wasn't imagining this. That is what is happening. That is the end result. We can go to all the marine yards. Other than having our people work as helpers who pick up, sing, and drop stuff here, all of the skilled technicians are imported. So I am saying, Mr. Speaker, our education system has to be fundamentally revamped. And frankly, we do not have the time. And so yes, some of the decisions are going to have to be made quickly and they are going to have to be implemented. Our children will continue to get left behind. I can go further, Mr. Speaker. What is the percentage that tourism contributes to our GDP? Everybody accepts it is the single biggest driver of the economy. And look at our education system. We pay lip service to it. There is no culinary school on the island. There really is no service school on the island. New and so on obviously have done their best and have tried. TAMCC to some extent. But if you just take the total number of persons who work in the tourism industry, you will see that our education system again makes no reference to that. And worse yet, Mr. Speaker, if it does, it is always the low-end jobs that our people get. So they are not part of the supply chain. They don't own the dye shops. You have dye shops in Carriacou. Is any Grenadian operating a dye shop in Carriacou? No. So, Mr. Speaker, the reality is, if we do not, as a parliament, as a cabinet, as persons within the education system, sober up to the reality. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we're even importing people to do some of the low-end jobs. People don't want to accept that. There are Grenadians hiring Filipinos to do domestic work and getting work permits right in Grenada. That's the reality of the situation. And then it's compounded by, and the Minister of Education will tell you that, because we encourage this fascination with grades and certification, and brand name school versus non-brand name school. What have we created, Mr. Speaker? We've created a situation where some schools are overcrowded and some are underpopulated. We have to tell the truth. Your child is at a disadvantage if they're in a class with 60 students or 50 students or 40 students compared with 20. So why would we have schools? And Mr. Speaker, I'm not casting this on any. I am saying we face this reality now. And I hope the MP for Piti Mabik and Carrick would allow me to say this. In the current allocation, Mr. Speaker, we have a situation where Bishop's College, a brand new school, is built. It has how many? 28 students? 28 have been allocated to Bishop's College. And how much to Hillsborough? Over 50 something. You have a newer school that's probably bigger and has more space. So you send double the amount of students to one compared to the other. Now, I'm thinking, if we simply explain to our parents, or students, or stakeholders, how could that make sense? You're obviously going to be overworking one set of teachers, underworking some. We have to be courageous enough to tell the truth and say, let us have a conversation. So even if you want your child to go to Hillsborough, there's a certain point when you don't put him outside, in the hallway. You have to say, listen, we make the school great. The parents, the teachers, the students. We have the ability to improve and change the schools. We can't keep pushing everybody to go PBC, or pushing everybody to go Convent St. George's, or pushing everybody to go SAS. Because the schools will be overcrowded, the teachers will be stressed, our schools are not air conditioned, the place is hot, you can go on and on and on. So we have to get to the point where we say, the equity requires us to make all our schools good. All our schools great. And we cannot do so if we have a system where we're trying to squeeze people into a particular school because of the historical brand name associated with it.
So, folks, that's very important. That was the most honorable Deacon Mitchell there, our beloved Prime Minister, speaking to education. So if the NNP is serious about lifting their supporters out of poverty, out of their vulnerable state, they will support our beloved Prime Minister and his administration as they try to educate, as they try to empower, as they try to provide avenues for upward mobility for our people. So we should not just take all the resources and give to the NNP supporters, because every time the NNP speaks about the poor and the vulnerable, that's their supporters. They want everything to go for them. So last year, for example, or 2001, for example, not last year, 2001, they spent almost $18 million on the new Imani training program. The majority of people in that program, you know what household they come from or where they came from. And they call them the poor and the vulnerable. There was this sewing cooperative that they set up in Pearls, in this community center. Again, you know, it was a political thing in my belief, and that went either bust or no longer exist. $7 million was allocated for that. The Empower program, $6 million. The Seed program with the poor relief assistance and so on, $18 million. The Debution program, $10 million. Farm labor program, almost $2 million. The needy assistance program, almost $2 million. The uniform allowance program, not almost, but $1 million. Burial assistance, $300,000. The safety net program, some new safety net program that they talk about, $2 million. Housing assistance, almost $6 million or so in that program. And then they have the Grenada Improvement Program, House Improvement Program, $10+ million for that. Special projects and so on that was administered from the Prime Minister's ministry and so on, almost $20 million. Faith organization, $6+ million or so for that. The free textbook program, some ebook or whatever, $6 million, whatever they call it. You're talking about almost $150 million. And that's just some. almost $150 or so million going directly to the NNP supporters, in my belief, because they call their supporters the poor and the vulnerable. That is why the old cock has a problem with the fact that the NDC decided to give every child who attending TAMCC and NULO the tuition assistance. Every child, not just some, not just those who you believe rich or those who you believe poor. The old cock has a problem with the fact that the NDC is seeing every child equally, not looking at it as this parent drives a vehicle, this one doesn't, this parent working, this one doesn't, that parent live in a wooden house, this one live in a concrete house. That is how the NNP was viewing these things. Listen to the old cock.
With it. The issue of free education and other nonsense again, when in fact the NNP government was providing tuition for those who cannot afford, and providing books allowance, free books for those persons who can't afford, providing transportation allowance, uniform allowance. NNP had broadened this thing. It's my own personal view, and I've said it. If the country has enough money to give everybody everything free, free books, free tuition, free transportation, and I say, and we have oil money running, I say give everybody. But in a time that you're claiming that things you have difficulty and shortages, and you had to cut back on poor people seed program and so on. In a time that you have this, you tell him you're giving free tuition to everybody, and that's it. And you're not talking about the transportation allowance, you're not talking about uniform allowance, you're not talking about providing additional support to the poor people so they can buy some food and so on. So what is that? What is that meant to be?
Yeah, so the old cock, that old cock is angry, is bitter, because the NDC is seeing a child as a child. So all the students who are attending TAMCC and NULO, they're getting the $810 tuition support. They're not watching face. They're not watching whether your mother working and how much she working for, or whether your mother or father driving a car, or whether you living in a wooden house or a concrete and board house or a concrete house. They're not watching that. They see a child as a child. But the NNP, they angry, they bitter. The old cock, angry and bitter. And that's the same thing that the NNP engaged in with the free textbook program. They nasty. The NNP, they nasty to the core. What they did, the NDC started the free textbook program where parents were given nearly all the books for their child. The NDC ordered the books, paid for the books, and nearly all the books were given to the parents. Don't matter what school they were in, private, public, don't matter what school. The NNP came into power, and you know what they did? They removed all the private schools from receiving books. All the students who were in private schools were not collecting or getting books. They said the parents could pay. That is how nasty this regime was, They're nasty and bad-minded. And here what they did further, they watered down the program. They stopped other books. Because, they had their friends and them with bookstore and bookstore here and so on. They stopped other books. So after a while, when people go to the program, all they could get is 1 or 2 books. And then the parents had to find money to go and buy books. They're nasty, they're bad-minded. So they want the NDC to do the same thing, but the NDC is different. The NDC always sees a child as a child. Hence the reason the free textbook program was for all the students of Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique. The tuition support, the free tuition support is for all the students attending TAMCC and NULO. Let the old cock deal with that reality. He's too damn bad-minded and wicked with himself. That is what's going on. He's bitter. He's sour. Deal with it. You're too bad-minded as an individual. So, folks, you know, those NNP supporters, because the NNP called them poor and vulnerable for so long, had the old cock out there talking about the housing program.
We didn't invest any serious money. The Chinese government agreed to the arrangement and agreed to 2,000 houses. And it was meant to be given to the poor people of this country who do not necessarily will be able to qualify to go to a bank. So no matter all the things you're hearing, or they're going to get guarantees on, this is nonsense. The fact is, the minute you talk about a one-bedroom house for $50-something thousand and another bedroom house, two-bedroom for $70-something thousand, you are in fact ruling out a lot of the poor people who should be getting these houses. I would not say totally free, but with minimum.
Yeah, you're too nasty with yourself. You're too bad-minded with yourself, because the NNP gave some houses out way before the NDC came into power. So they gave out some of the houses in the housing schemes. And they put people there. The majority of the people who they put there are NNP supporters. Most of them, they ain't working anywhere. They unemployed, and they call them the poor and the vulnerable. But they put them in those apartments, and they give them a letter with the cost of the apartments. These people have to find $30-something thousand, $40-something thousand, $50-something thousand to pay for the apartments. And they sign an agreement with Housing Authority to say they're going to pay $200 a month, $150 a month, $175 a month. They started paying, first month, second month, third month, fourth month, fifth month. And then they stop pay. And then if you go up in that facility, in those facilities, it's like a project, a slum. All kind of old stupidness happening there, because they dumped these people in those facilities and they know they couldn't pay. They had no way of paying, but they call them the poor and the vulnerable. So Housing Authority has to repair the facility now and saying to these people, well, you ain't pay, but we have to repair it. Some of these apartments are on, they're leaking, the windows mash up, the doors mash up, the light, the switch, you just mash up. And that's how the NNP people operate. Once they're paying for something, they're mashing it up. They're mashing it up. So these people were given a cost under the NNP. Under the NNP, they were given a cost for the apartments that the NNP knew that they couldn't pay. Then people are walking, they go in those facilities and they just make it a whole pile of children and just make it a slum, a project, a ghetto. That's what happened. And they mash up everything in there. Now, Housing Authority has to find $2.2 million to fix the thing. Where would they get the money from? Every year they have to find $180-something thousand to insure the property, just in case you have fire or some natural phenomenon. Come on. But that old bad-minded individual talking about the poor and the vulnerable. You think the poor and the vulnerable should be placed in these facilities? You think so? To make it a ghetto? The poor and the vulnerable, your supporters I'm talking about. Yes. When a nurse, a young policeman, a young teacher, prison officer, fisherman, farmer, who working, earning a daily bread, they could go, get a loan, pay housing, the $53,000 or $55,000, get the apartment, pay housing, the $75,000 or $73,000, get the apartment, start somewhere, right, in a peaceful environment with decent people, with reasonable people, with people who would not break your place, who would not bring drugs, right, and the oldest profession in the world there, they would not cause the place to become a ghetto. You have to screen and make sure you have a certain group of people in these facilities so it can be maintained, right? But you want the poor and the vulnerable, you want your people to go in there. So they go mash it up and wreck it and turn it into some ghetto, some slum. It's not going to happen. Let them find the money and go and buy the property. Go and buy it. Get ownership. Get equity. Property costing what? $100,000, you get it for $55,000, you should be happy. Go and get the money to do it. That's what it is. Get some responsibility. You ain't walking nowhere, you have no payday, and you want apartment. Huh? And even if they give you for $30,000, $40,000, you would not be able to pay. What would you do to get the money to pay? Huh? What would you do? the oldest profession in the world. Come on. Come on. That is what the NNP did to these people. They put them in Mount Rush. They put them in Frequente. They put them in Sobeys. And they can't pay the $30-something thousand. They can't pay the $40-something thousand. They can't pay the $50-something thousand. So the place end up running down. It's like a slum. But folks, we're out of time. I want to thank you very much for being a part of the program. I want to wish you all the best. I will be back with you tonight in the hub, starting from 8 in the